How is this show so good? Hey, I'm Jared Woodcox, author of the young adult fantasy series Shadowcasters. I'm back with episode 6 of my Avatar Rewatch. All right, today we're talking about episode 6 of Avatar Imprisoned, and I think this is such a cool episode. Right off the bat, we get to see some more cool earthbending, and I love the scene where Haru runs away, and it shows that he's like ashamed of his earthbending, and we quickly realize the reason for that is because these firebenders have been rounding up earthbenders in this village and taking them captive. I love how Katara tries to say like, hey, he needs to be able to earthbend, and he talks about how it helps him feel connected to his father. But obviously, it's so much more complex than that. Like, if he gets caught earthbending, he could be in huge trouble. This obviously develops into a really cool nuance where there's this old man that's in trouble. He's risking being killed and the mine collapsing on him. So Katara convinces Haru, like, you know how to save him. And so Haru uses his earthbending and rescues the old man. And, like, it's such a cool moment. But then I do also love, like, it's like a knife to the heart. But, like, when that old man actually comes back and then turns Haru in, it's like, who is this guy? Like, I wish we did have a little bit more like closure with him or like a later payoff with him coming back, because that was such a rotten thing to do. Like, you see that guy do that and you hate that guy. Like, what the heck? Like, Haru saved your life. How could you do this? But it is cool too, I guess, playing devil's advocate, right? Is that it just shows like the corruption and the fear the Fire Nation has put into people. Because even though it doesn't go into detail about what happened to that old guy in this show, like, I'm sure he got a handsome reward. He probably was thinking like, you know, the world's in turmoil. How can I look out for myself? And even though Haru saved his life, he saw an opportunity to gain favor with the Fire Nation or perhaps get some sort of reward. So he was willing to turn Haru in, which is pretty complex morally and says a lot about the state of the world without going into a ton of detail explaining it. Of course, we get a lot of funny moments like with Sokka finding the nuts, and he says, you know, he hates them too. Aang gets the hat, and obviously that becomes important later because it covers up his arrow before the people in the village or those Fire Nation troops that come are aware that he's the Avatar. I like the Fire Nation troop that comes to Haru's house, just because he kind of reminded me of like this Sheriff of Nottingham type vibe of like, oh, I got to pay up, like taxes are going up. And again, it just gave a really cool view into like what the world is like with the Fire Nation in control. As an aside, like Avatar just does such a good job of explaining the world naturally, and like you understand what people are feeling and what the political circumstances are without being beat over the head with it, because it shows you what's happening. You see it in real time. Their fear of earthbending, the old guy turning in Haru, the taxes, the warden that I'll get to in a little bit. It all just really does a good job of helping you understand how the world works. Another cool thing about this episode is it really does do a good job showing that, like, yes, Katara is courageous and she wants to help, but she is a little bit naive. Like how she just wants Haru to, like, use your earthbending, like, fight back. And even when she's on the ship, she's like, you guys, you know, I've always heard about the earthbender's spirit and your courage. Like, they can't take that from you. And she's just so, in a sense, naive that like she doesn't realize like their spirits are crushed, like they've given up. And obviously that changes at the end of the episode, which is really cool. But it shows a lot about her character, and obviously it's great that she succeeds in this instance. And it's really cool to see how her efforts pay off in the end. An important aspect of this episode is it also introduces Katara's necklace, which is significant because it belonged to her mother, and it's the last thing she has of her after the Fire Nation attacked, and the necklace becomes an important part in the episodes coming up. It was really cool how she bonded with Haru over the loss of parent. Obviously, Haru's was a lot less tragic than Katara's, and Haru has, you know, a happier ending in that regard than Katara, but it was a cool bonding moment for sure. There's a scene that's like really cool. I love it's like the morning after Haru's been taken, and Katara's using the water bending to fill up the vase, and she turns and she sees Haru's mom, and Haru's mom, like, tears fill her eyes, and Katara just drops the vase and it shatters, and like, I don't know, it's just super cool. Like, it was a super impactful, memorable scene, and I liked it a lot. We also see Sokka, like, with his leadership in this one, that he wants them to leave. He knows they're in danger. Like, he really takes on this fatherly protector, like, leader role, even though sometimes he's viewed as, like, the goofball of the group. But I just love that side of Sokka. And there's a good joke here where it's like, we need to leave or we might be eating fireballs for breakfast. And Katara cracks the joke, I'd rather eat fireballs than nuts. And, you know, just kind of coming back to the joke around him only being able to collect and gather the nuts for them to eat. It was just good. Like, there's good funny moments in this episode I really appreciate. I think my favorite part of the whole episode, certainly on the comical side of the fence, is Katara is determined that she's going to get arrested for earthbending. They're going to fake that she looks like an earthbender, and so they have the rock on the vent, and Aang uses airbending to push the rock up. You have the part where Katara like jumps, says with earthbending, and like it's really kind of corny, but it's meant to be, and so it's really funny. And then I just love when the Fire Nation soldiers are like, look, that lemur is earthbending. And it's just such an eye roll moment, but so funny. And of course, Sokka's like, no, you idiots, it's the girl. And
that lemur, he's earthbending.
No, you idiot, it's the girl.
Oh.
So they're like, oh yeah, of course. And they take her and arrest her. Like, these are the type of just like cheeky, silly, kind of cornball, campy moments that I love about Avatar when they're executed this way, that it makes you laugh. It fits within what's happening in the episode. And so just love that whole sequence. Both like the serious, cool strategy side of like, hey, Katara's going to get arrested by faking this, but also how they make it funny with obviously Momo and some of the things that Katara and Aang say to each other when they're like fake fighting and all that, but Sokka gets self-conscious about the size of his ears. Like, it's just really good. It's a really cool sequence and one of my favorite moments in the series so far, honestly. The Warden is super cool, a super cool antagonist. I almost like want to know more about him. But it's cool how he is just this imposing figure and talks about like, hey, there's nowhere for you to earthbend. I think it's also really critical. We see here that the Warden, he actually dehumanizes earthbending. Almost talking down on them for their style of bending not being, the way I interpret it, like as pure or as majestic as firebending. So we see this component as well, that like the Fire Nation saw themselves as like the ones that were most fit to rule and to take over. Like they justified their actions, and like this is very prevalent. Like that's something we see in the history of the world as well. This is actually something that surfaces in my Shadowcasters books as well, is that there's certain Shadowcasters that they think that because they have an ability to Shadowcast, they should be the ones that rule over those that can't cast. So it becomes a pretty prevalent topic. So I loved how in Avatar we saw this as well. The Fire Nation sees their bending as the most pure or the best of all of them. Mentioned these in my short recap as well, but just briefly, like I thought there was a little bit of a regression to Aang's character where there's a few like serious moments where he made some jokes that were kind of like didn't quite land with me, and it was like, come on Aang, like I love that he's childish, like his jokes are hilarious, like I usually love that about his character, but when they come at a time when I would expect the Avatar to be like a little more serious, I just sort of felt like a step backward for him. At the same time, like I get that's part of who he is, and he's still in this process of learning and like understanding like he can't just be the funny kid anymore. He has to take some responsibility. But there was a couple specifically when he was like on the Fire Nation ship and things were pretty intense that I was kind of like, I feel like Aang is kind of past this now. Like he would take this more seriously than he was here. To flip that though, one thing I love about Avatar in general and throughout the series is they do such a good job with payoffs. Like in this episode, we have like they use the vents to push the rock up to do the fake earthbending, but later that has a payoff of on the ship, they're going to use those vents to have Aang push the coal up to give the earthbender something to fight with. So again, like they have these subtle things that happen early that then return later on that are really cool. And of course that happens in individual episodes and across the series. Like for example, Haru is going to come back, which is great. And so I just love like these cool payoffs they have where something's introduced early and then does something more substantial later on. It's great writing. It's one of the things that makes the show really superb. Get to kind of this ending scene here that's really cool where Aang has pushed the coal up through the vents. They have the coal around them, and Katara says basically like, now's your chance, fight back. And for a second, it still looks like they're not going to, but I love that part where the Warden walks away and Haru hurls the piece of coal and hits him in the back, and then the Warden turns around and Haru's got the coal in his hands, and like all of a sudden it's like it's clicked with them and they're so excited and they're ready to fight against the Fire Nation. That moment, like I just love that pause and Haru throwing the coal. It's really cool. I will say the battle scene, like the concept of it was cool. Like I love that they're fighting with these pieces of coal and like using the Fire Nation's resources against them. That was super cool. But it wasn't like as impressive visually or like cinematically as maybe I would have liked. And there's like the part 2 where Aang he makes like, I call it like a bazooka out of airbending where he's like shooting the pieces of coal. Like it was okay to me, but not my favorite. I think there were elements of this fight that could have been more exciting. I did really like when they used earthbending with the pieces of coal to then like launch the Fire Nation guys overboard. I thought that was a really cool part. And then of course there's that iconic line at the very end where Haru and his dad are talking to Katara, and basically they say it wasn't the coal, it was you. And so like, yes, the coal gave them the means, but it was Katara's speech and Katara's courage that finally got through to them and got them to act and fight back against the Fire Nation. Now this is starting to spark hope. Like this is one village, one group of released prisoners. They know the Avatar is back and they have found this strength and courage to fight against the Fire Nation. And it's like a little ember, not to use a Fire Nation pun, I guess, but like a little ember that's going to grow throughout the Earth Kingdom and help as they look to fight back against the Fire Nation. Last of all, the end of this episode is so cool. I love when Katara realizes that she's missing the necklace from her mom. And then we flash over to Zuko bending over and picking it up and just looking at it. And it's just such a great ending. It gives such cool foreshadowing for what's to come. It's very ominous. Just having that reminder that like, oh yeah, he's still after him. Now he's got something to track him down with. You know, to use as a bargaining chip, what have you. There's cool stuff coming ahead. But just love that final scene there where Zuko finds Katara's necklace. Okay, rating this one. I went back and forth between an S and an A. For me, the argument for it being more of an A instead of an S is, like I said, some of the stuff with Aang's comments. The fight scene at the end was like not an S tier fight scene in and of itself, But I am going to give this episode in the end an S ranking. Right now it's going to be at the low end of the S tier, but I just really, really like it. I love the payoff of the events. I love meeting Haru. Maybe I'm just, I really like Haru. Maybe I'm a little biased there. But I think Katara, like, being willing to, like, get herself arrested and spark the courage of these earthbenders, like, that whole theme is awesome. I think the Warden is a really great villain. So just across the board, in my opinion, this is another S tier episode. Like, guys, I love this show. I thought I was gonna be like a little bit more like critical of the show as I rewatched it, but I'm just like sipping the Kool-Aid. Like, I love Avatar so much, and there's so many things about this episode that are so great that I really enjoy. Let me know what you think. I feel like the one that I gave a B to is kind of all by itself down there, but do you agree with my assessment of this one? Is it an S, A, B? Have I been wrong, right, all over the place? Would love to hear your comments, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.